Can you hear us? Can you hear us? Your panel is now, I can see you, yes. Yes. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so dear Commissioner Šefčovič, dear Maroš, dear Mrs. Odobescu, dear Luminița, thank you so much for joining the annual reunion of the Romanian diplomacy of 2022, and for this special panel which is dedicated to the EU in a changing world, consolidating the European resilience. This is a very important theme, important for us, important for the EU institutions, important for the member states, but also very important for our partners in the neighborhood. I'm really honored to welcome Vice President Maroš Šefčovič for this session as a special guest. Maroš Šefčovič is a very long-standing friend of Romania and a very respected voice in the European Commission. So thank you so much for accepting our invitation to take part in today's plenary, despite your almost impossible agenda that you manage these days. Your experience and expertise in EU affairs are overwhelming. Before the current portfolio, you are a member of the European Commission responsible for different fields such as energy union, interinstitutional relations and administration, education, training, culture and youth. And in this respect, you are a proof of the commitment to the European values, and you have a deep understanding of the European Union and of its institutional mechanisms. Let me also express my appreciation for your activity during the conference on the future of Europe as chair of the working group on health, where Romania was one of the 6 countries that participated and contributed to the debates. Although your reputation is a common knowledge for us, I need to say that your contribution to the strengthening of the European Union is an impressive one, and I trust that you will continue to have a very active role in the EU debate on the future of the European Union in the current situation, which is marked by such difficult challenges. And we all know that from your different positions, you have always advocated for unity and cohesion of the member states. And one of the most remarkable examples in this respect is your approach in dealing with the negotiation with the UK. You have managed to skillfully represent our interests, be it in terms of preserving the protocol on Ireland and Northern Ireland, or in terms of protecting the rights of EU citizens, including Romanian citizens. A big thank you for this. Especially in the extremely fluid geopolitical and economic landscape that we are facing right now. Solidarity, unity, convergence are extremely important, and you can count on Romania's active contribution and support to this goal. Now, we have come a long way for preparing to various future crises, but I think in front of any crisis you face new challenges and also sometimes new opportunities. So further efforts are, of course, needed, and because your role in fostering resilience is important, given that you have the strategic foresight portfolio. We are looking forward to learn from you, from your thoughts, what can be done in the future together. Romania would like to continue to play an active role in the EU-wide foresight network, and has recently coordinated in that framework a cluster on digital resilience that allowed for an interesting exchange of views on how to build cyber resilience in the new EU digital era. On this note, I would like to pass the floor to you, dear Maroš, and invite you to share with us your thoughts. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, dear Minister, dear Bogdan. I think you represent extremely well the traditional excellence of the Romanian diplomatic corps, being so nice, so polite, and being so generous in your remarks, and I really very much appreciate it. And I also have to say that of course if you get an invitation from Romania, an invitation is presented by such a persuasive ladies like Luminița or Julia, together with Adina Avaleanu, there is no way you can refuse, and you can only look forward to address the outstanding Romanian diplomats. And as you know, not only two of us, but many of your colleagues, we have long-standing relationship with from my time when I was working for Slovak diplomatic service or here in Brussels, and of course with Mircea Joanna. We are on speed dial very often, and I think he's also doing outstanding job, not only to represent your country that well, but also to enhancing the cooperation between European Commission and the NATO, and bringing creative ideas. How can we work also on the level of strategic foresight between two our institutions? I also have to say that your conference of diplomats and ambassadors is taking place at the most appropriate time, because indeed, as you said in your introductory remarks, Bogdan, I think that if we look in retrospect in few years' time, I think we would all agree that what we are living now are probably the most transformational moments in European history since the Second World War. I think we see unprecedented global shifts. I'm sure that you discussed a lot climate change, the impacts it has on our daily lives, on the economy, and I think we've been going through dramatic summer with different unprecedented weather developments, which are bringing increasingly high human costs, but also enormous material damage. This morning we had our college session, which we devoted till the great part to, I would say, the question of today, and I would say this autumn and this winter, how to deal with energy crisis, with energy security, with energy prices which are creating enormous economic pressures, high inflation, and of course living cost crisis all over the European Union. And then of course I know that I talked to the diplomats who are dealing a lot with the security issues. Again, over the last 2 years, we have seen how the multilateralism is unfortunately again replaced by multipolar attitudes, where the big countries wants to show not only the economic might, but used to the big advantage also military hard powers, and how also thanks to this hyper digitization and globalization, we see the weaponizations of literally everything, from data through energy to food, critical raw materials, or information spread. So all these, I would say, are new elements we have to deal with, and therefore, when we started with the strategic foresight on the political level, and it's kind of, I got it as a greenfield project on the level of commissioner, our first foresight report was very much focused on what was, I think, missing in our architecture for this European Commission. We've been very much focused on green, on digital, but it was quite obvious already during the COVID crisis that what we need in Europe is much more resilience. To be very honest with ourselves, if we really need to import everything, including face masks and paracetamols from faraway countries, and how pressed we are when suddenly the planes are not flying and the ships are not sailing and the borders are blocked. And I think the fact that we kind of then enhancing, thanks to the contribution from the member states, to look how resilient we are from various perspective, from green perspective, digital, socioeconomic and geopolitical, kind of help us to usher us to the next strategic foresight report, which was focusing on strategic open strategic autonomy, and I will think about it in a second. Of course, what is completely changing the game again is the return of war to European continent, is this immoral, horrifying invasion of Ukraine by Russia, with this enormous human and material cost, and honestly the cruelty with which it's executed. And I think that clearly showed us that we have to look at the whole perspective with totally new attitudes. And here we have, of course, very high hopes that Romania would play a very important role and can help us to find the good answers, to chart a new way, and to help us to consolidate our European positions as a global actor in all these fields. You've been working a lot in this area, and I know that you very proudly host two important resilience centers. And I know that because I was there when they've been open, and I think that they are contributing already a lot to European Union, be it your European Cybersecurity Competence Center, or be it Euro-Atlantic Resilience Center, which is looking at different threats, including the unconventional ones which we are now facing in Europe, but also in Euro-Atlantic community. On top of it, I have to say that you are playing a very important role in the military field, and very soon I think you'll have the 10th anniversary of the agreement to establish NATO Aegis Ashore ballistic missile system in Deveselu in southern part of your country, which is playing, of course, very important role in the collective defense of Europe, of Atlantic community. And I think that role of Mircea Joana in NATO is very well known. He's very much respected, and I already make a reference to his contribution to the Euro-NATO cooperation. I think that one of the lessons learned from the last few years is that we have to be much more forceful in addressing our strategic dependencies. I was talking about need for resilience, but we didn't know what kind of test Russia will prepare for us. Because in the aftermath of COVID crisis, what we did was that we went through 5,200 different products we are importing to Europe to see where we are too dependent on one entity as a supplier or one country. Actually, the result was not so bad. I mean, it was around 130 where we assessed that we are very dependent, but all of them in very crucial areas, mostly linked with critical raw materials. And I think that the price we are paying today for our energy dependency on Russia is so high that I think that we will all learn, and I hope take a proper lessons that we cannot afford another dependency, which right now appears even bigger if it comes to critical raw materials, especially those which we need in all future-related technologies, from computers through photovoltaic panels, down through our aerospace to the wind turbines, which we need for our clean energy. Again, the fact that you manage to ramp up gas production in the Black Sea, and that your goal is to achieve self-sufficiency in the gas supplies, and maybe even to become exporter of the gas to your European neighbors, is a very important one, and I think now it plays extremely crucial role. Always when we discuss the EU Romanian issues, we are discussing also Moldova. What can we do for Moldova? How can we help them with energy security? We've been discussing a lot also this connecting pipelines through Iași, Ungeni to Chisinau, the role of the EBRD. And I also want to thank how you approached and help us also with your advice. And the European Commission was looking for different kind of financial resources and political support to make sure that there will be energy supplies provided to Moldova, especially at the beginning of this year. And you know the situation was quite dramatic at that time. And therefore, coming back to the critical raw materials, because there again, Romania can become definitely, if it comes to magnesium, an EU industrial hub of the future. When we look at the critical raw materials, as I said, we are in a situation where we have to diversify suppliers. We have to learn how to reuse and recycle our raw materials better, and how to substitute some of the raw materials which we know will be very difficult to obtain in the future. Because if we look at the main suppliers of the critical raw materials like China, we see that if 10-15 years ago they've been ready to export 80-90% of some of the critical raw materials, this proportion, what they are ready to export, is decreasing every year. And from time to time, we have a regular critical raw materials crunch situation, crises, and therefore I think we have to learn from the situation we have right now to make sure that we would avoid such a dramas in the future. Maybe last point for not speaking for too long, because I really would like to have the possibility to answer to some of the question of your Bogdan, Luminica, or your colleagues, ambassadors in the room. But I would like to end up on a very important political point. And that's the fact that clearly we are not only going through the most transformational period of Europe since the Second World War, but for the fact that we have to work better with our friends. We have to brace them closer to our chest. We have to open different new levels of cooperation, political, economic, on the peoples-to-peoples level, because I think we need to consolidate the European, Euro-Atlantic political space. We see that democracies are under pressure. Unfortunately, over the last 10 years, we see that the pendulum is shifting to the bad direction, and actually more people in the world is living in the countries with autocratic tendencies than the people living in under liberal democratic regimes. And therefore, we need to work together much better than before. Therefore, our decisions on Ukraine, on Moldova, on Georgia have been so important. Therefore, we need to permanently signaling to our Western Balkan countries that they are part of Europe, that their future is within the European Union, and we have to work very actively and positively with countries in our neighborhood. And I know that your diplomacy is doing that, and it would be very important for the future. Therefore, I think the idea of the European political community would be very important for the future, because it could help us to have that level of communication, to that level of contacts, and provide hopefully that level of reassurance, what we didn't always achieve when we've been looking at sometimes too technocratic processes of enlargement, and too much focusing on the nitty-gritty details of this and other part, because simply the countries for whom we have to care, with whom we have to work, didn't feel that there was that sincere attitude, that can-do approach, and the reasonable time horizon within which they would become the real members of the European family. And I think sometimes the message that you are in Europe, not only geographically but also politically, that we want to work with you, would be so important for the future. And therefore, I think that the next discussion on this project on the level of the European Council, which, if I recall correctly, President of the European Council, Charles Michel, is scheduling for the 6th of October, and then launch of this project together with, I hope, reinvigorated an enlargement process, would be, I think, the best answers to, again, this polarizing world, to this, I would say, imperial goals and aims of the big powers, and even to the military aggression against Ukraine. So to conclude, I really would like to thank you for your kind invitation, for excellent cooperation with your country, with all your outstanding diplomats, and with the fact that Romania is always playing on a European note. is always supporting Euro-Atlantic military solidarity and is looking for the ways how to contribute to the success of the European project. Thank you very much, Bogdan.
Thank you so much, dear Maroš, for your extremely comprehensive overview of the problem and of this topic. And I'm looking forward to the session of questions and answers. But before that, let me invite our colleague Luminița Odobescu, who is Presidential Advisor for Foreign and European Affairs and former permanent representative to the European Union, to take the floor. Her outstanding expertise in European affairs is very well known to all of us. So I don't need to get into very much details. So please, Luminița, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Bogdan, dear Vice President Maroš, dear Minister, dear colleagues. Thank you for the invitation. Always a pleasure to be with you and to discuss these challenging subjects related to our resilience. Our reunion this year finds us in an unprecedented context in the history of the European Union. The geostrategic reality is indeed changing and will be shaped by our answer, by our response to the complexity of today's challenges. And I'm referring to the serious security concern following the flagrant violation of the European peace order, supply disruption, price spikes in the energy sector, economic destabilization through rampant inflation and public debt crisis, humanitarian crisis, maybe global food crisis, climate crisis, I would say, with a potential trigger for further humanitarian crisis and mass migration. And the overall risk given the impact on our citizens on social unrest and even instability. We still don't have the full picture of these ongoing developments. You said unprecedented shifts. Implications, of course, are multiple, interlinked and complex, and of course affect key areas of European resilience. Even if for now we can only partially grasp the scale of these changes and their outcome, we really need to properly reflect and prepare our response. This is crucial in order to minimize the negative consequences and have a say in shaping this new geostrategic reality so that it would correspond the first say to our fundamental values. In order to enhance the European resilience, of course, security and peace are essential. How we can achieve them, this is the question, unfortunately, without an answer for the time being. Equally important is the fact that the most exposed to the immediate effects of these challenges are our citizens. So in shaping the response, we, European institution, member states government, need citizens by their side, by our side. We should keep in mind that the EU has delivered over half a century of peace on the continent, thanks also to a successful formula of economic prosperity. A high cost of living, a high cost of a high price for the energy or for the food could become major issues for our resilience. This is why I believe our action at the EU level needs to be threefold. Firstly, we have to continue in a coordinated way with our transatlantic partners to support Ukraine and to sanction Russia. Then we have to act swiftly and in unity in order to deliver on substance, especially in areas of immediate interest for our citizens' well-being. While at the same time, I think there is another important point. It's important to ensure a proper communication. A proper communication so that Kremlin propaganda, and not only Kremlin propaganda, does not succeed in eroding trust in our institution, trust in our values, and in our economic model. On the first point, the EU action unknown and should continue. Unity remains key, even though it's not always easy to be kept. Support for Ukraine should continue for as long as it takes, not just for Ukraine, but also as an existential issue for the EU to uphold the European values that define us. On my second point, it's clear that Russia's actions aim at deepening division between member states and eventually see the EU softening its position as winter advances. And our answer should be to stand together and prove that we do not compromise our values and we have the necessary tools to overcome the current challenges to safeguard our economies. And there are two main areas I would like to particularly focus on. I will start with energy, which is an important weapon. Putin still tries to use it against us, and I've seen Commission today reacting with some proposals. We are going to analyze them and to discuss in the light of the meetings of energy ministers. Is just the beginning, because we should act in unity fast. This is important. This with direct consequences for our citizens. There are issues Romania asked for, like this to cut this price formation, the link between the electricity and the gas price formation. This is an important position of Romania, so we count on the Commission to come up with, in addition to the proposals. So this energy remains a priority on EU agenda, and Romania is ready to contribute because it's really related to the security and to the resilience of our societies and economy. Another point is related to the green transition. This summer, you said it, Maroš, this summer was another example that green transition is not waiting for us to reflect on different solutions, and we have to act now. And also linked with energy, this green transition could enable our energy independence through the use of domestic renewable sources, and of course this will require massive investment, but we have different tools at our disposal, like Repower EU, but not only the National Resilience Plan. And here we really have to act quickly. On the digital transition as well, we need to focus on a solid cybersecurity environment at EU level, while also keeping for the increasing technological competition. You remember our position saying that the resilience EU requires that this transition, green and digital transition, do not deepen existing disparity among member states and EU citizens, but focusing on convergence, cohesion, and closing these existing gaps. My third point is on our relation with our citizens, and I spoke about propaganda, and we know that, for instance, Kremlin propaganda is extremely active and spares no effort in blaming EU for the cost of living crisis. Their methods are becoming more and more sophisticated and tailored for EU audience, and will serve as a fuel to social tension and throughout the continent. So therefore, we should act together through bringing citizens on board through a proper communication, tackling disinformation, nurturing our attachment to our fundamental values by raising awareness, building also this sense of solidarity throughout Europe from east to west. What we do now together definitely will determine if the next generation will live in a peaceful Europe. And as a European, I'm convinced that the only chance we have is to act rapidly, smart, and united. And of course, I'm confident we can do it. And we have seen, for instance, at the beginning of the pandemic, our reaction through massive investment plan to the next generation, to the investment in vaccines. So each time there is a crisis, there are opportunities. And I think staying together, working together, finding solutions together, we will become more resilient and will find in our own interest the proper answer for our resilience. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Luminița. And now we end the public segment of our session in order to go to questions and answers.